The ending of this book made me cry so much. Like, I loved this. 5 stars. Like, this is an easy 5 stars. The entire second half of this book, I was debating the entire time, like, is this 4 stars or is it 5 stars? Hey, how's it going? Welcome back to my channel. My name is Gabby, and today we're gonna be starting on a very fun reading vlog. And this reading vlog is gonna be dedicated to me reading your favorite books of 2024. If you missed it, I recently asked in an Instagram story and I asked on YouTube on my community post for you to recommend me some of your favorite books that you've read this year. There were so many incredible recommendations, so like, thank you so much for that. This is a video that I have made once before. I actually made the first round of this video last November, so if you missed that, I'll have it linked down below. These are some of the books that were recommended the most that I have already read. And so the first book that I'm going to be reading in today's reading vlog is going to be Blue Sisters by Coco Mellers. This one was recommended 6 different times. There was 1 mentioned on Instagram, and then there was 5 mentioned on YouTube. And to be honest, this is one that I was really excited when I saw that it got mentioned so many times because this is a book that was already on my TBR. I already owned this book. All I know about it is that it's a literary fiction book that follows these sisters, and that tends to be like one of my personal favorite like niche things. Like, I love literary fiction that primarily follows sister relationships, so I already felt like this was gonna be something I would end up loving, so I'm so glad that it got mentioned as a favorite of the year. The second book that I'm gonna be reading for today's video is In Memoriam by Alice Wynne, and this one got mentioned 5 different times. I had 2 recommendations on Instagram and then 3 recommendations from YouTube. I know that my friend Kendall has been trying to get me to read this one for like a few months now, and earlier this year that was the first time that I had ever heard anybody talk about it, is when my friend Kendall was talking about how much he loves this book. The reason why I was a little bit nervous to read this one originally is because this one is a historical fiction and it takes place during World War I, but we're following this forbidden romance between these 2 guys who were like best friends during World War I. So I always thought that if there was anything that was gonna sell me on this book, it was gonna be the forbidden romance between these 2 guys. The third book that I'm gonna be reading for this video is the one that got mentioned the most amount of times, and it's Knock Knock Open Wide. This one got mentioned 7 different times. I had 2 comments from Instagram stories, 5 comments on the YouTube post. Like, I actually couldn't believe how many times this one got recommended. And this is a horror novel that I believe this one published last year. I had actually never even heard about this book until my friend Kayla over from Books and Lala, she read it earlier this year, and I don't really know anything about this story other than that it's kind of like an Irish folklore horror type of story. And then the fourth book that I'll be reading for this video is I Who Have Never Known Men. And this one got recommended 3 different times. I had 2 comments on Instagram and 1 comment from YouTube. But this is also one that I've been hearing about quite a lot throughout this year. I don't really know too much about this book other than the fact that I think it originally published in the 90s and it was translated. And I think this one's more of like a dystopian kind of story. I know my friend Jan recently read this one and really loved it as well, so it has me very excited to check it out. I was able to get this one on audio through my library, so that's how I'll be reading it. And then lastly, I wanted to do 1 extra book that's only going to be included in the Patreon extended version of this vlog, but I will have the link down below for the Patreon extended version of this vlog, where I'm also going to be reading Where I End, which this one was recommended 2 different times. It was recommended both on YouTube, and I was very intrigued by this because this one's a new release horror book that I had actually never even heard of before it got mentioned in these 2 different comments. And this one, ironically enough, is another Irish kind of folklore horror book, which I didn't really realize I was going to be reading both of those like back to back. This is another one that I am very intrigued by. I was able to get a copy from my library. So those are all of the books that I'm going to be reading in today's video. Let me send you back about a week ago when I started with Blue Sisters. How's it going? I just wanted to film a quick update because I have started reading Blue Sisters. I got up to chapter 6. I'm about 116 pages in, and I am absolutely loving this so far. Like, I am loving it so fucking much. I mean, I'm not gonna lie, the chapters are a little bit long. I mean, each one of the chapters has almost been like 20 pages long or something, but I don't even mind because of how much I'm loving the story and the writing already. You know, I kind of had a feeling that I was gonna love this one because I always talk about how I love literary fiction books that specifically follow sisters. You know, like, I just love it so much. As somebody myself who is like very close to my sister, I just really, really love and connect with books like this that talk about sisters sisterhood. And so in this story, we are following 4 sisters. So we have the oldest sister, Avery, who is a very interesting character because I think she's the only queer character out of these sisters. I mean, she has a wife and she's this lawyer who is living with her wife in London. And she's also a recovering heroin addict. So I already feel like Avery is just one of those characters that has so many layers. And then the next sister that we're following is Bonnie, and she is a former boxer, but now she's kind of like working for a bouncer at a nightclub in LA. We also follow the sister Lucky, who is actually the youngest sister in the group, and she has done like a lot of modeling. And then they also had a sister named Nikki who has recently passed away. The story is actually taking place about a year after their sister Nikki has passed away, and you're kind of getting to see the impact that this has had on their family. You know, because they keep talking about how like they've always been an even number with the 4 of them, and now like all of their balance is off because they don't have their sister anymore. But I'm already feeling so connected to these characters and their story already. I think the writing in general, like there's just something about it that is really, really working for me. I mean, gosh, the book opened with this very beautiful quote about sisters in the prologue of the book. It says, "True sisterhood, the kind where you grew fingernails in the same womb, were pushed screaming through identical birth canals, is not the same as friendship. You don't choose each other. There's no furtive period of getting to know each other. You're part of each other right from the start. Look at an umbilical cord, tough, sinuous, unlovely, and yet essential, and compare it to a friendship bracelet of brightly woven thread. That is the difference between a sister and a friend." And I was like, damn, like that is beautiful, because like that's so true. Like a sister is not somebody that you choose, it's just somebody that you've always had. One of the other quotes about sisters that I really, really love is when she says like, "It's good that you have each other because you never have to explain yourself to sisters," which I do think is true. But I also love how she says to one of her friends, she says, "Until you know my sisters, you don't know me." And I think that that's so accurate and relatable, especially for me. I mean, me and Rachel have always been so close. Like everybody always thought that we were twins growing up because we always like shared a lot of the same friends even throughout like school and high school. And then like me and my sister, we ended up getting, you know, like the same job in the restaurant. Like I got Rachel hired at the restaurant where I worked at. And then like we ended up working together, you know, like I was store manager, Rachel was assistant manager, and then we eventually flipped and Rachel was store manager and I was assistant manager. And like me and my sister have just always been so fucking close. And like it's always been kind of a joke with like all of the friends in our lives that like, yeah, you don't really know me unless you know my sister. Like it's like we're 2 halves of a whole. And so I just really loved and really connected to that quote as well. I do also like love so many of the quotes about like living in New York City and about growing up in New York City. But then there's also been some really great quotes about LA too. I love this one quote when they said, "Living in LA is like dating a really beautiful person who has nothing to say." That is low-key so facts. I mean, I'm originally from California, you know, like I grew up in the South Bay, Los Angeles area, and I just really feel like that way about LA these days, where it's like, yeah, it's a really beautiful place, but it has nothing to say. But so far, this is feeling like it could have all of the 5-star energy for me. Like I'm just really connecting with it. I mean, the main premise of this book is that all of the sisters are going to be getting together because they don't want their parents to sell the apartment that they grew up in New York. And their parents, it's only been like a year since the sister Nikki has passed away, and they're already talking about selling this apartment, and all the sisters are like, no, we can't let them do that. So the main premise of the story is about how they're all kind of like reconnecting as adults and trying to come together so that they won't sell this place where they grew up. But yeah, anyways, I'm hoping to read more of this today. Hopefully I can finish it, maybe. I don't know. I'm loving it so much. I don't really have any plans for today other than, you know, watching the Vampire Diaries. And yeah, I'm gonna make a dinner for us a little bit later, and it should be a good night.
Just where it was needed, gleaming black as night, cloistered in injustice, dead in the eye of time. Nobody.
Hello, good morning. It is now the next morning. Oh my gosh, I slept on wet hair, and this is the result of that. Oh my god, it looks crazy. I mean, I made dinner for me and my sister. It was really good, and then we ended up watching 6 episodes of the Vampire Diaries. We are now on season 4, episode 5. Finished season 3. Oh my gosh, the ending of season 3! And I'm still really obsessed with it. And if you were wondering, I'm still Team Damon. But anyways, I have still been reading Blue Sisters, and I am now 192 pages into this book, and like, I am loving this so freaking much. Like, I already know in my soul that this is gonna be 5 stars. This is definitely gonna be like one of my top favorite books that I've read this year. Like, I already know. I just love this so much. Like, I always talk about this, how I love stories about sisters and especially like complicated sister relationships, and I feel like this one is doing that so well. I also think it adds this extra element of like mystery in a way because one of the sisters has passed away, you know. It's like, so we're only hearing about that sister from the perspective of her other sisters, and it's like really unique in that way, but also like really sad in that way. I can't remember if I mentioned this yesterday or not, but the sister, one of the sisters, Nikki, the one who died, she actually had endometriosis, which is like not a spoiler or anything because they talk about it literally at the beginning of this book. And I feel like reading about that is extra hard, you know, because my mom actually also had endometriosis. And so I feel like some of the conversations, you know, like related to that are just like, whoa, really powerful. I also feel like as somebody who has a sister that has experienced some, you know, invisible pain, as they're calling it, you know, because we do read from the perspective of the sister saying like how hard it is to watch your sibling go through something that's like invisible pain that like the doctors can't see, and she's constantly having to like explain herself and like explain how much pain she's in, and like nobody's just really taking it that seriously. Like, that shit just honestly broke my heart because, you know, you might recall, if you've been around on my channel for a long time, you might recall that back in 2020 my sister had some really severe like kidney problems. Like, she was in and out of the hospital for like a week, and it was like one of the worst things that I've ever gone through. You know, she had to get emergency surgery, and throughout that time in the hospital, you know, like my own sister kept talking about how like it was so awful because they just kept asking you, you know, like on a scale of 1 to 10, how much pain are you in? And she would always say like she never knew what to say. And this one quote in this book talking about the invisible pain, she says, "Where language failed, numbers were no better. How many times had Nikki been asked to rate her pain on a scale of 1 to 10? It was a riddle. Choose too low and she might not get the relief that she needed, but choose too high and she'd be dismissed as hysterical. What was the magical number? She tried 6, 7, 8, 9. She never dared consider herself a 10. Avery had watched her writhe in hospital waiting rooms and doctor's offices trying to find the right combination of words and numbers that would unlock permanent relief, and she never found it." Is that not so hard-hitting and like sad and beautiful? That section in particular just like really reminded me of my own sister, and it really gutted me just because like I know how hard it is, especially as an older sibling, to watch your younger sibling in pain and like not be able to do anything about it. I just really related and connected to that whole section, and it literally almost brought me to tears. There's been so many good conversations about like religion and how like maybe religious people feel more comfort about like going through grief, and like also why it's difficult for somebody who's going through some serious grief to like be religious. There's also been some really great conversations about like addiction and like why people are looking for relief and like why people get addicted to drugs in the first place. I don't know, there has been so many incredibly deep, thought-provoking conversations throughout this book, and I am obsessed. Like, I just love this so much. Like, this is my exact kind of book. Hi, it is the next morning, but I did want to update you because last night I was able to finish reading Blue Sisters, and oh my god, like the ending of this book made me cry so much. Like, I loved this. 5 stars. Like, this is an easy 5 stars. This has got to be like one of my top favorite books of the year. Like, I loved this so much. It just really moved me. I think that if you're somebody who has a sister, I really genuinely think that you're gonna connect to this. I started tabbing this book like crazy, and one of the tab colors that I had was specifically for, you know, really good quotes about sisters and like talking about sisters, and it just like, the idea of like losing my own sister, or like the idea of seeing her in any pain, that really triggers me. Like, that is something that is very close to home for me, and I just really emotionally connected with this because of that. But this book just really had so many beautiful quotes that were so moving. Like, I loved all the quotes that were like, a lot was written about romantic love, but this too was deserving of rapture, of song, like talking about the love between sisters. And she said, before she ever knew a lover's body, she knew her sister sisters, could see herself in their long feet and light eyes, their sleek limbs and curled ears. And before life became big and difficult, there were moments with them when it was simply good. And like describing, like a good and safe childhood, that you spent together before you really understood, like the cruelty of the world. It says she'd slept too, safe in the center of her sisters, not knowing or needing to know where she ended and the next began. They were love, beautiful and unbearable, and hers. Like, bitch. I mean, gosh, the book is good when I start writing like full-blown notes in the margins of the book. That rarely ever happens for me. I think if I had to pick a character though that I felt like I connected with the most, I think it would be Avery. And I don't know if that's because she's like the oldest sister, or if that's just because I was like the most invested in her timeline and her story and like what was going on with her. But I also like really loved Bonnie's chapters. Like Bonnie is the one who is like the boxer, she's the fighter, and she just had a lot of really interesting story to her as well. I think I would say out of the 3 sisters that we were following in this book, I think I did connect with Lucky the least. I still loved reading from Lucky's perspective, and I think that she had a lot of interesting things going on in her chapters. I just think her chapters were slightly less interesting for me compared to like Bonnie and Avery's chapters. The way that these sisters were all able to like connect over, like their shared grief of their sister Nikki was just so beautiful, and like it was really hard to read at times. Like I feel like if you're going through grief, or if like you've ever lost a sibling, I feel like reading this book would be really hard, but maybe also really healing at the same time, just because it was so beautifully written. I think I'm gonna start on In Memoriam next, which this is probably gonna be another emotional book.
When we're finally sober, they'll be gone. The trees will bloom and ice will melt.
I have started on In Memoriam, and I am now about 90 pages in, and I'm kind of surprised so far how much I've been enjoying this. This is one that I was a little bit nervous to read, I'm not gonna lie, because I'm not the biggest historical fiction fan, but apparently stories that feature gay characters in historical fiction, it's like 10 times more interesting to me. So in this story, we're following these 2 young guys in the years of like 1914 and 1915. It's during World War I, and we're following this character named Gaunt, and then this other character named Elwood. And we kind of get the story in like flashbacks of like how they got to know each other. We also get like some present day timeline, and then we also do get some letters that they've been writing to each other throughout the war. Dude, oh my god, there was already so much tension between them in like the first like 15 pages. It starts right away. I literally already had to like put a little tab in here so like it's good when I'm tabbing a freaking library book. Like, why do I do this? I don't know, but I feel like I have to come back to this. It's like the tension between them. Oh my gosh. Okay, this guy's name is Elwood. He already calls him Ellie. Like, I love a nickname like that. So cute. This is the quote that kind of like took me out. Like, I'm like, oh my god, they're just so cute. And I love the freaking tension between them already. But it says Gaunt always fled when their friendship threatened to tilt into something more complicated. It was an uncomfortable, unspoken thing between them. Elwood was in love with Gaunt, and Gaunt was thoroughly decent and conventional. And that's only like 20 pages in. Like, oh my gosh, they are already like things are happening, and I'm just like shipping this so hard. I think this book is also having a lot of great commentary about, like the war and like masculinity and why men feel the need to like join the war in the first place or like serve their countries, and how like a lot of that is pressure from people, saying that they need to grow up, they need to like serve their country, to like be a man, to be an honorable man. Like there's a lot of conversation like that already happening in this book, and there have been some like really brutal things about the war that you've been reading already, and like that's the one thing that like it's really hard for me to stomach sometimes with like books that revolve around war. There's usually like some really graphic and really sad and awful things happening, and that's definitely starting to happen already. But the romance, oh my gosh, like the romance has already been so interesting. Listen, I don't know if it's because I'm watching the Vampire Diaries right now, but I am picturing some of the characters from the Vampire Diaries as these characters. Like, I'm sorry, but Gaunt, he's giving me Damon vibes. And then Elwood, like, I don't know, dude, he's kind of giving me Klaus vibes. Like, does anybody else ship Damon with Klaus? But I can't help it. Like, that's kind of who they're reminding me of, so that's who I'm picturing in my head. But I am really surprised that I'm enjoying this so far. I'm having a good time. I think this afternoon I might actually try to go to the gym. I don't know. It's been a few days since I've, gotten out of this apartment and actually went to the gym, and I feel like I really need it, so maybe I'll continue listening to this on audio while I'm at the gym.
Yeah, I'm speeding 91, drunk driving, losing all intention, falling. Once I was was living for the passion. Now it's all missing without you. Yeah, I'm speeding 91, drunk driving, losing all intention, falling. Once I was living for the passion. Now it's all missing without you.
새벽 2시 밤늦게까지 telling me that you Gucci. 너답지 않지 got me driving like a movie. 난 아직 굳이 걱정 따윈 없지 pedal to the floor. Only seconds left to go. 새벽 4시 오아침까지 미안한다고 말하지.
I literally just finished In Memoriam. I mean, ratings wise, I don't really know what I want to do because I think the romance in this book was an absolute 5 out of 5, like one of the best romances that I've read in a long time. Like, I was so giddy. I was so happy. I absolutely adored these two together. Like, they were genuinely so cute. But then, like, the plot of this book, it really kind of lost me at times. And so I feel like the romance, while the romance is like 5 out of 5, like one of my favorite things that I've ever read, I feel like the plot of this book was probably like a 3 out of 5. Like, I just didn't care that much about the plot and like what was happening in the story. After about like, I don't know, 150 pages in, I want to say, we hit a part 2 in the book. I feel like things started happening in the plot that I really just struggled to care about, or like I really struggled with part 2 of this book. And part 2 just lasted for such a long time that I was like, I don't know, I was starting to lose interest just a little bit. But then I really, really, really loved the ending of this book. So I do have kind of like mixed feelings on it, but oh my god, like what incredible characters, what incredible writing. The writing in this book was so beautiful. Oh my gosh, I was taking pictures of this book because I didn't want to like obviously annotate. This is a library copy. So instead I was taking pictures of the pages in my phone and then I was like putting them in my notes app and like writing in my notes app. Dude, some of these quotes, like, are you fucking serious? There's this one where the quote says, "And it was a magical thing to love someone so much. It was a feeling so strange and slippery, like a sheath of fabric cut from the sky." Like, are you fucking kidding me? That's beautiful. Beautiful forbidden romance. Oh my gosh, like the forbidden elements of this romance. Because they really feel like they have to help each other through this war, and I think there is a bit of miscommunication between them because it seems very obvious that like Elwood is in love with Gaunt, but then like Gaunt has this kind of attitude where he's like, we're just doing this to get through the war, right? Even though he's like hiding his true feelings. And like, oh my god, I live for it. I thought their romance was so freaking sweet, and I just loved both of their characters like so much. So like maybe if you are a historical fiction reader, like an avid historical fiction reader, maybe you would just absolutely love this. Like I see so many people loving this. I never actually cried during the reading experience of this book, but I did get very close a few times. I also think that if you did love this book, you would probably really enjoy The Heart's Invisible Furies by John Boyne. It did kind of remind me of that one because, you know, that one is another historical fiction book that follows a queer man. I mean, gosh, it's just so hard for me to rate this, you know, because like I was just saying, I loved the romance so much. Like I will never forget some of the scenes in this book with the romance. Like I was blushing and shit. Like I ship them so hard. But like plot wise, I just really struggled with this one a little bit, and I just couldn't bring myself to like get invested in the plot and what was happening. Tonight, me and my sister have been watching The Vampire Diaries as usual. We are now on season 5. Like, oh my god, we have literally flown through this show. I mean, because since yesterday was a bad mental health day, I didn't do anything yesterday except for watching The Vampire Diaries. So we watched like 8 episodes just yesterday. Now we've finished season 4. We're on the first episode of season 5. Things are just crazy. You know, like I'm not going to talk about any spoilers or anything, but things are just crazy. And also, is it just me or does Elena get more and more annoying every season? I don't know. I'm not a huge Elena fan. I'm not going to lie. Like, why is it that she has like the least personality out of like every single character on the show? It doesn't make sense. It has been about 2 days since the last time that I updated this vlog. I do apologize with this vlog. I know it's just been like a hot mess. I haven't really been vlogging that much. You know when Taylor Swift sang, "Gray November, I've been down since July" in Evermore? That's just how it's been. You know, like I've just been really down for like these last couple of months, and I do apologize. It's been kind of a struggle bus over here, but I did want to let you know that I have started reading the next thing. I've been listening to the audiobook for I Who Have Never Known Men, and this one is one that I really didn't know too much about about it, like plot-wise, when I was jumping into it. I'm already 48% of the way through this on audio because the audiobook is only 6 hours long and this story is just flying by. And in this story, we're following these 39 women who are being kept like in this cage underground. It's kind of confusing. Like, I don't know. I don't really fully understand like what is going on in this book. To be honest, I feel like some of it might be going like right over my head. But the premise is like really odd because these women are like trapped underground and like they don't remember much about their lives before they were down there. They also like don't have any real concept of time, but they do know that there are these guards who watch over them and that they're essentially trapped down there. The way that this book is written is just so freaking haunting. Like there is something about the writing that just feels so haunting and so beautifully written. Also, it feels very timely right now that I'm reading something like this. To be honest, I'm kind of like, oh my gosh, I don't know, with like the state of America and like the world right now, I'm just like, this feels so bleak and just kind of sad, and it's reminding me of like all the horrors of the world. I thought the first like, I don't know, 20 to 30% of the book, it did feel a little bit slow for me at the beginning, and I was kind of feeling confused, like what the fuck is even going on in this book kind of vibes. But then around the 30% mark, I really got hooked into the story because something happened in the plot and I was like, whoa, okay, that's interesting. So I've definitely been a lot more invested since around the 30% mark, but like I am very impressed by the writing in this book. Like I can definitely tell why it's been considered to be a classic already, even though it just came out in the 90s, because there's just something about the quality of writing that just instantly draws you in. It makes you feel connected to the characters and it makes you feel like emotionally invested. I feel like this might be one of those books that really like hits home, you know, with like the hardships of being a woman and like the struggles of being a woman who's like so misunderstood in a man's world. Like that's kind of the vibes that I'm getting from this book. And I'm like, oh my gosh, like this could not be more timely that I'm reading this, you know, it really couldn't. So I am really enjoying this one so far. I think I'm gonna finish listening to this one on audio today. I actually have a really long drive this afternoon. I mean, I'm going to my friends Josh and Katie. They're having like a Friendsgiving kind of gathering tonight. And my friends Josh and Katie this summer, they moved about like an hour and a half or like 2 hours south of where I live. And so I haven't seen them actually since they moved this summer. And I really want to like go down and see their new place and like hang out with them. So we're going to be doing the Friendsgiving thing. I do have to go to the store right now because I said that I would bring dessert for the Friendsgiving, so I need to go figure out what I'm gonna bring for dessert. But I am really excited to see them because it's been so long and I just feel like it'll be really good for me to like get out of this apartment and go and hang out with friends. And so I'm really looking forward to that tonight. But because I do have such a long drive, like I should be able to finish listening to this audiobook on the drive down there. That's the hope. Okay, I went to the store and this is my contribution. I got jumbo snickerdoodle cookies. Oh, snickerdoodles are my favorite. I mean, I would have brought like a pumpkin pie or like something more seasonal, but I saw on the potluck list like other people are gonna be bringing pies, so I thought I would bring cookies. And then I also brought this Riesling. This is more of like a housewarming gift just for Josh and Katie. So I also packed up some books that I'm gonna be bringing for Katie because she's a pretty big reader. So hopefully these are some that she enjoys, but let's hit the road. It is now after 10 o'clock at night. I just got home and it was so much fun because I got to go to a place in Washington that I've never been to before. Like I've never been to this town, so it was really cool to visit. And their new apartment is just so beautiful and so stunning. And it was so nice just to like get the chance to catch up with them and hang out. I was actually having like an issue though finding their apartment. Oh my gosh, it was kind of embarrassing because they live in one of those apartment kind of places where there's just like tons of apartment buildings everywhere. And I couldn't figure out which building number they lived in. And I was there for like 30 minutes walking around being like, where am I? And I had to pee so bad. And then I finally found they had a leasing office on site, and I literally walked into the leasing office and I was like, please help me. I have their address. I don't know where I am. And luckily the girl at the leasing desk, she was so nice and she like pointed me in the right direction. I was on the complete opposite side. Like I had to take my car and like drive around the block and like go through another street and do all this stuff to get to their place because I was in like the completely wrong spot. Luckily the drive wasn't too bad. Like it was raining on and off while I was driving down there, but it wasn't too crazy. And all of Josh and and Katie's friends are all so nice and so welcoming too. Like, it was just such a great night. And while I was on the way down there, I actually did finish listening to the audiobook for I Who Have Never Known Men. This was a very quick read, and this is one that was just so sad. And to be honest, it was kind of heavy because we're following the story about like these women who are dealing with such hardships, and they're also like feeling so hopeless, and things just feel so bleak in this book. And I think that that's very hard. It's just a very tough subject matter to read right now with everything going on. I saw on Goodreads, this girl Emily May that I follow, she described this book as being a deeply introspective novel about hope, loneliness, and the things that give life meaning. And I feel like this is one of those stories where like you're constantly trying to figure out like what is the meaning or what is the significance of this certain thing, and there's never really any answers given to you. But it's also like maybe that's kind of the point, you know, like maybe some things in life are just meaningless, and like maybe some things just happen sometimes. I think with a story like this, it's like really hard for me to figure out how I feel about it, because like I don't feel like I was necessarily like super connected with the characters in this book, but I also don't know if that's something that you necessarily need to feel, especially because our protagonist is unnamed in this book, you know, like she's never given a name, and maybe that's for a reason, you know, because this is supposed to be like it could be anybody, like anybody could connect to this character because of it. But the ending of this book was definitely something that I'll never forget. I mean, after reading those final words, like after they were coming through the audiobook, I was like, oh my gosh. And then right afterwards, it went into this like author's note, kind of talking about like the inspiration for this book, talking about the author's life. You know, because this book was actually written in the 90s and it was translated, it's interesting to learn some of the author's history and like how she's connected to this story and like why she felt like it was important to tell this story. And after hearing the author's note, I just developed an even deeper appreciation for this book and like what it stands for. I feel like there's so much great commentary in this book about so many different things, but there is a lot of really great, you know, like feminist commentary throughout this book. There's a lot of great commentary about, you know, like the society that we live in and like capitalism and like all of these things that we feed into. It was just really interesting and it was very thought-provoking. So like I can absolutely see why so many people are connecting with this and giving this book 5 stars. I think for me personally, it's sitting at more closer to like a 4-star. I think in theory, like the idea of this book and the concept is absolutely 5 stars. And like the writing in this book is so beautiful, so stunning. Like I really wish, part of me wishes that I did have a physical copy of this, because I can guarantee there would be so many quotes worthy of highlighting. This book felt like it was missing something for me to want to give this one 5 stars, and I don't even know how, like I don't even know what that is necessarily. But this book just, it didn't necessarily give me that like glowing 5-star feeling that I get from books, but I can really, really appreciate this story and what it stands for. And I'm so glad that I finally read it, because I've been hearing great things about this one for a while. Oh my gosh, another very successful read for this vlog, which is incredible because I feel like this vlog is just going so well. I've had 1 5-star and 2 4 stars. I don't know, I can't remember the last time a vlog has gone this well for me, so I'm happy about it. But anyway, I am probably just going to call it a night. I'm probably gonna spend some time on TikTok tonight watching edits of the Vampire Diaries. I've gotten to that point now where I'm watching Damon thirst traps. Like that's my life now. Like what was I doing when I was actually 15 and why wasn't I watching the Vampire Diaries? I'll never know. But yeah, it's getting to that point for me where it's becoming like obsessive. Like the Vampire Diaries is like taking over this little pea brain. But it's okay, it's a good time. I'm having the time of my life watching the Vampire Diaries for the first time. Hello, it has been about 24 hours since the last time that I updated you. Yesterday, I ended up completely like rearranging my room because I just got that feeling that it needed to happen. I actually haven't rearranged my room since like February this year, which is a long time for me because I'm usually the kind of person that wants to like rearrange my room every couple of months. But anyways, today I've just been sitting in bed all morning reading Knock Knock Open Wide. I was actually gonna like want to go out earlier today and like go to the park, but it's been raining all day, and it has been such a gloomy November so far. And you know, the fact that now it's getting dark at like 4 o'clock in the afternoon, like I don't know, man, it's already getting to me, the winter vibes, and it's not even winter yet. So I decided to stay in bed instead, and I've been reading this all day, and I'm reading it with my eyeballs. I'm now 104 pages in. I wanted to hit page 100 before I updated you, but it took me a lot longer to read those 100 pages than I thought it would. I think it's because, you know, I talk about this time and time again, but I really do rely on audiobooks these days, and sometimes when I'm trying to read a book just physically with my eyes, it's hard for me to focus. So even though I'm absolutely loving this book so far, like I really feel like this could be a 5-star read, like I'm loving it, I'm so invested, but it still took me about like 2.5 hours to read those 100 pages. Like my brain has just been all over the place, but I am really enjoying this one so far, and this book feels really cool. Like I don't think I've ever read anything quite like this. I mean, I know that this book is being described as like an Irish folklore kind of gothic horror book, and I am loving the vibes and the atmosphere in this book. Like, oh my gosh, there were so many scenes that have already given me like full body chills. Like there is something about the writing in this book that is so creepy and so unsettling. Like, there have been so many scenes where I have to like reread the scene over again because I'm like, wait, what is going on? And so in this story, we're following these two different timelines. One of the timelines, we're following this girl, I think her name is pronounced Etain. It's E-T-A-I-N. There's a lot of Irish names in this book, so I apologize if I mispronounce anything. But we're following this character named Etain, and it's in 1979. We're following this girl on Halloween night, and her sister Kate is going to be throwing this party that's in this like really small town on the outskirts in Ireland. The next morning, when she's leaving, she has to go to work early in Dublin the next morning, so she leaves the party early. And then when she's on the road, she sees this corpse that's on the side of the road. And it says in the premise of this book, she takes the corpse to a remote farmhouse, and so begins a night of unspeakable horror that will take her to the brink of sanity. She will never speak of it again. And like that night that she spent at the farmhouse, like what the fuck was going on? Like, oh my god, I was so freaked out. The way it was written, it just really like got under my skin. Like I was genuinely scared. My eyes were like scanning the page so fast to try to see what was gonna happen to her because I was so scared for her. And then this story also follows this character named Betty 2 decades later. So then her story's taking place in 1999, and she's this student in Dublin that's going to college, and Betty is getting involved in the drama society at the school, and she's also getting involved with this girl named Aisling that she's like falling in love with. And it's really interesting because Betty's character is starting to take some college classes that are about Irish folklore, and so she's kind of learning more of like the folklore in Ireland and the history, and it's all been very interesting because I don't know really anything about Ireland and folklore, and so it's been very interesting to like learn what she's learning about in that class. And the story seems to be revolving around this creepy like childhood show that everybody remembers, but like they don't remember it very clearly. It's honestly reminding me a little bit of that book Mr. Magic, but this is like everything that I wanted that book to be, because I thought Mr. Magic was actually so boring and so ridiculous, but like this book is like really nailing it with like the creepy unsettling vibes. I don't want to like spoil anything of what it's been talking about, so I'll just read you the premise here when it says, everyone in Ireland watched this show in their youth, but Aisling soon discovers that no one remembers it quite the same way, and only she seems to remember its star, a small black goat puppet who lives in a box and only comes out if you don't behave, but they say he's never come out, almost never. Oh my gosh, it's so creepy. Like I don't know what it is about that just like gives me fucking chills, dude. Like the way that this book is written is so creepy. I've already read this one scene that is going to live in my head rent-free for the rest of my life. It was that first night where she was at the farmhouse. Like, oh my god, something happened that was just so creepy and so unsettling. Like I can't stop thinking about it. So I am just absolutely loving this. Even though it's taking me a minute to get through it because I'm reading it physically, I am loving it so much. Like this really does feel like it has 5-star potential for me already. Like I know I'm early on in the story, but I have such good feelings about this. It's been like 2 days since the last time that I even updated this vlog. I've still been reading Knock Knock Open Wide. This is my 3rd day reading this book. I'm on page 205 now, and I am planning to finish this today. Like, I need to finish this book today. You know, it's so crazy because I am absolutely loving this still. Like, I'm still really loving this. I feel like I could give this 5 stars. I'm so used to being able to get through a book in like 1 day, maybe 2 days at the most. So for me to be reading a 3rd day on this book, like, I feel like it's taking me a lot longer to get through it than I originally thought that I would. But it's also because my attention span, like my focus, has just been so shot recently. So I'm literally doing some reading sprints on Patreon right now, and I'm like, I will not end these sprints until I finish this book. I also put my phone like in the other room, so like I don't even have access to it, so that I can concentrate fully on this book. And I'm still like, I'm loving this book so much. Also, this book keeps mentioning the song With or Without You by U2, and I forgot how much I fucking love that song. It gets mentioned it a few times now, and I was playing it on my Spotify after I heard it again because I was like, I haven't heard this song in such a long time. And there's something so magical and moody about the song With or Without You by U2. It is so good. There was one scene too that I just read last night before bed that I was like, oh my god, like that is so weird and so creepy. But the things about this book that I find to be creepy, I feel like they're really subtle things that might not seem that creepy to other people when they read this. And so I'm loving it so much. I'm having such a great time. Like, I can't wait to see where it goes. Okay, hello. It has been a few hours since I last updated you, and I just finished reading Knock Knock Open Wide. And this book was such a freaking trip. I literally just finished reading it a few seconds ago, and my brain is just like processing a lot of things. Something that I do think is really cool is that at the end of this book, the author kind of includes this note about Irish folklore, and he kind of talks about how like certain things in the book were actually inspired by like real life Irish folklore, but then a lot of the things were also made up. So he kind of like encourages you to like do your own research into looking into what are the real things and what are the not so real things. But like, very cool to even know that any part of this book was inspired by like real life Irish folklore. I mean, I was talking about this earlier, but like, I don't know if I've read very many books that have Irish folklore in them. So I feel like this was a really unique and interesting reading experience. I don't know if this is like the perfect 5-star for me, because I think this book is hard for me to rate, because I think just based off of vibes alone, I do think that this would be 5 stars for me, and I think the characters are worthy of 5 stars. Like, I felt so connected to these characters, but I do think that there was something in the plot where like it did start to lose me a little bit in those last 100 pages, because there was something about the weird creepiness of this book where like I found it kind of hard to follow like what was even happening at the end. And I don't know if that was just me, like if that was like a me problem with like I wasn't fully grasping the words that I was reading, or if I was actually supposed to be that way where you were kind of supposed to try to figure out like what exactly is happening. But I think there is kind of like an eeriness in the ambiguity of like maybe not knowing exactly what the fuck you just read or like what was going on. I just know that the vibes of this book were so deeply unsettling. Like, this book had a lot of different things that personally really freak me out in horror. The thing that's so great about the horror genre is I know that there's different things that like scare different people, you know, and this one just had so many things that really get to me, especially like psychologically. I think there are so many moments in this book that are really creepy the more that you sit on it, you know, like the longer that you think about it, the more you're like, yeah, that is really weird. Like, that is so creepy. And I love that about this. Like, I feel like this is a book that I can grow more appreciation for the longer that I think about it and the longer that I sit with it. Like, genuinely, if you read the book Mr. Magic and you were like, man, I really like the idea of like a creepy children's show, but the book never went anywhere interesting, I highly recommend you check out this book, because Mr. Magic for me was a DNF. I thought it was so freaking boring, but this book has everything that I was wanting from Mr. Magic, because this book is just so genuinely creepy. Like, the idea of this childhood show that nobody can really recall in the same way, it's just mind-blowing to me, like how fascinating this was. I also just loved the queer sapphic relationship that was really at the center of this story between that girl Betty and then Aisling. Like, they really are kind of like the main characters of this story, and I loved that. I adored their relationship. I thought they were so well written and just like so cute and perfect for each other. Ugh, I just know that this is gonna be one that I'm gonna be thinking about for such a long time. So that is going to be a wrap on reading your favorite books of the year. I mean, I could not be happier with how this vlog ended up going, because I did find a new 5-star all-time favorite. Like, this is probably gonna be in one of my top favorite books of the year. And then all the other 3 books that I read for this vlog were all 4 stars, like books that I really enjoyed, and at times I was debating on giving any of these 3 books 5 stars as well, especially like Knock Knock Open Wide. I feel like the entire second half of this book I was debating the entire time, like, is this 4 stars or is it 5 stars? And right now I do feel more comfortable giving this 4 stars. Like, I think concept wise this is absolutely 5 stars, but more of like my reading experience with this book, like my enjoyment level of reading this, was more like 4 stars because I do think there were some parts of this that felt very, you know, like a lot slower paced and just harder to get through. But like, gosh, what an incredible couple of books that I read for this vlog. If you would like to see the extended version of this video on my Patreon where I read an additional book, I will have that linked down below. But otherwise, thank you so much for watching. You'll have to let me know if you've read any of these books. What are your thoughts on these books and what are some of your favorite books of 2024? I would love to know. Thank you so much for watching as always, and I will see you very soon with another video. Bye!